welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. I'm Sydney, back as promised, 2 weeks in a row, and that will continue. I have a very special guest. Our fearless leader at Spartans Illustrated, David Harns, is here joining me today. We have a couple topics to go through, but the first thing I want to talk about, David, I want you to give the listeners a little bit of a rundown on your path to becoming kind of where you are now at Spartans Illustrated. Give them a little background on who you are and what you do with Spartan Athletics.
Sure. So it was back in 2010, and a friend of mine started a website that kind of covered sports at a kind of a local level. And I noticed that the Michigan State coverage wasn't as high quality as I think it should have been. So I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I'd like to give this a try. And he's like, sure, go ahead. So I just started writing for him. It was called iSports Web at the time. It's kind of crazy. It's been 12 or 13 years for that now, but
Yeah.
Worked hard, just kind of writing articles and learning about how to go about that and what it meant to actually kind of develop sources and learn how to, frame stories and things like that. I didn't realize it at the time, but one of my first articles, I interviewed Kirk Cousins. I went into his dorm room and took my 7-year-old son Elijah, and I had this great story, wrote the whole thing up, published it, super excited about it. And then I shared it with some of the folks at Michigan State thinking, oh, they're going to think this is great. And here I go, I'm going to be able to, really get into the in crowd here. And the first thing was like, you broke like 3 rules at once, he says. And I'm like, oh man, what? He's like, yeah, you got to go through us if you want to talk to the student athletes. You can't go into their dorm rooms, and you're not supposed to take pictures of the players with your kids. I'm like, oh, all right, well, that's a threefer. I guess I messed that up. But ever since then, I've learned the ropes. Lots of different folks have helped me out throughout the years. Joe Rexroad and Graham Couch and some of the other guys that are, mainstays on the Michigan State beat have given me advice and kind of helped me out throughout the last, 10, 12 years. After being with iSports Web for, I think it was 6, 7, 8 years or so, they closed down their website, and I moved over to the Only Colors and met up with a lot of folks there, Ryan O'Blennis and Kevin Knight and all of these guys. And we kind of I joined their team really, but with it I brought kind of the credentialed aspect at Michigan State. I had been able to get credentialed while I was there at iSports Web, and so built those relationships and came over to the Only Colors. And then last fall, the opportunity arose that Jim Comparoni and his team left Rivals and went to a new site on 3. And so they took, they went over there, leaving a spot here for a new venture, and that's where I come in. And so I worked with Rivals to open up Spartans Illustrated, which, we are the Rivals affiliate here at Michigan State. Super proud of that. And we've been going for 6.5 months now. So we did change our approach a little bit when we left the Only Colors and we came over here to Rivals. A lot more focus on recruiting than we did over at the Only Colors. But it's been fun, and I still like to do some of the feature stories and some of the in-depth pieces that I enjoy. And then Ryan and Dylan and Seth and those guys, they really do a great job at the recruiting coverage. And so I've dabbled my toe in there a little bit, but I leave the nuances of that really to them. It's a crazy world, the recruiting world is, and I know just enough to not to know that I don't know enough.
Yeah.
But Ryan and those guys do. So super proud to have them on the team. Yourself as well. You and I have a funny story how we met, and I don't know if you want to share that at this point, but
Yeah.
it's good time as any, probably.
Yeah, so I was at a basketball game in the I-Zone, and I had the Cassius Winston fat head in my hands, and David came up the stairs and asked to take my friend and I, who were holding the Cassius Winston's head, picture on a very special and important night for Cassius. It was the night that they honored the passing of his brother, so it was special to get to hold his head, and we were feeling like, happy that we were able to do that. So David took our picture and he tagged us on Twitter, and then of course I followed him, and then the Only Colors and some of the other guys. You posted out that you were looking for a student intern, and I kind of was like, that would be fun just to try it out. I'm not a journalism student, never was, just threw my hat in the ring. And it has been literally probably some of my favorite memories from my time at MSU was working with you guys and getting to learn all this stuff. Kind of what you talked about with learning the ropes and learning, the different writing styles and everything. It's been really fun and a challenge sometimes, but a good challenge and something that I've really enjoyed. Something that
Yeah.
you touched on that I
Go
want
ahead.
to talk about more is how unique our team at Spartans Illustrated is and the unique articles that we put out. So, like you said, we focus on recruiting because that's a rivals thing. But something that I really love, and maybe I'm biased, I probably am, but is that we do throw in those other things like these big feature stories, or we, touch on all these other Olympic sports at MSU. I don't know anyone else that does that comprehensive of coverage. And that's just something that I find to be special about our group. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree, and it's always been important. You can the way I teach and tell students and tell my team members and
Mm,
such is that anybody can write a gamer, right? We can
right.
write what the score was, we can write who scored how many points and all that, but really what
Yeah.
sets the site apart is the analysis. And then once you get past the analysis, really it's like, okay, so everybody can cover the men's basketball and the football team, but what can we do to highlight the other Spartan athletes who are doing really amazing things on campus? And that's
Right.
where women's soccer comes in, and women's basketball comes in, and gymnastics. We've done a lot of the gymnastics
Hmm.
team because they've been doing really well lately, and so we try to make sure that we spread our resources around to capture as much of that as possible. I know that it's not possible to give all of the Olympic sports the treatment that they deserve, but we can do as much as we can do, and that's what we're committed to. I know on our team, Kevin Knight is really good at following a lot of, especially
Yeah.
women's basketball and some of those other sports as well. He does a great job of keeping us all in the loop on that and making sure that our readers and subscribers are caught up to date on that. And I know that you also that's really important to you, and you
Yeah.
feature a lot of different things, on the in the coverage that you do too. So thank you for that. But yeah, that is something that Spartans Illustrated, I hope that we get known for even more, is the fact that we purposely try to go out of our way to provide not just superficial coverage, but hopefully some in depth and get to know some of these student athletes in these other sports as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll have Spartans Illustrated linked down in the bio as it is, for every episode. I really do think that it's worthwhile checking out. And if you want more information, reach out to me or, Red Cedar Radar, any of our accounts, and we can talk more about the Spartans Illustrated site. One more question for you before we kind of get into our, deep dive topic here.
Okay.
And I've kind of asked everyone that's come on the pod this, just because I love these stories. What do you think your favorite moments and experiences have been during your time, kind of as you explained, covering MSU from the start? Do you have anything that sticks out?
Yeah, it's just been great to be able to be a part of some of these trips that the team gets to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go over to Ramstein Air Base with the team in Germany and really get to see some of how that all works when you're going overseas and onto the military bases. I've been able to go to the aircraft carrier game twice now, and that's just super amazing to be able
Yeah.
to have front row seat to cover. Those are some of the best
Yeah.
games. Michigan State doesn't seem to do very well in them, but they're still fun to be there. And probably the number one overall memory that I have, was credentialed for the Rose Bowl, and was able to go into the locker room afterwards and to watch the team kind of celebrating. I've got a video on my YouTube channel of just kind of a 2-minute video of just like a stream of consciousness, just walking through the locker room and watching all of the players and all of their friends and all their families just celebrating what a great year they had. That's probably one of my favorite memories. But there's a lot of different
Yeah.
things. The Big Ten championship game that clinched that Rose Bowl. being on the sideline when Jeremy Langford broke through the line and scored the game-winning touchdown down there. Those are just some of the pretty cool memories that you have. It really comes down to, though, the stories that go with the plays. And when you get to know the players, you get to kind of see, them succeed. And it's pretty cool. You get to be happy for them. And in our role here, we're not the traditional media where we have to be
Of course.
completely unbiased. We try to be
Right.
as unbiased as we can, but we don't forget the fact that there are fans that love these teams, and whether it be your families or your kids or your friends, you kind of have a little bit of that influence in you too. So
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I can't even just hearing those stories gives me a little bit of a chill, but
yeah,
it's hearing about all the hard work that you did to get to that point, which also makes it special. So, um, like I said, check out Spartans Illustrated. We have some really great, staff and team, and we put out tons of good stuff. And some of the good stuff that we put out is what we're going to talk about next. This topic has actually been on my mind, and Matt Sheehan and I touched on it briefly last week. So, Michigan State received an NIL award, which surprised me. And I think maybe surprised more people than just me. I don't know for sure. Um, Talk to me a little bit about a recent article that you put out that took kind of a deep dive into NIL at Michigan State. Where'd you get the idea? Um, Talk to me about your process starting kind of that deep dive.
yeah. So the article started out with me just kind of recapping a conversation that I heard between Darian Harris and Jack Ebling. Jack Ebling is a friend of the program. He a friend of Spartans Illustrated and a
Yeah.
longtime Michigan State writer for the Lansing State Journal. He has his own podcast now, and he always gets lots of cool guests. And so I'm not too proud to say that I listen to his show, and if there's something there that's interesting, I'll write about it. And of course, I always give him the credit that he deserves. But Darian Harris was talking about the NIL award, and I had seen that press release come through
Mm-hmm.
and read through it, and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
wonder what that means, right?" So I wonder how big of a deal this is, and what this actually means. And I'd been following the NIL stuff at Michigan State since it kind of kicked in, and I remember reading about the Evergreen program that they had, and the fact that
Mm-hmm.
they were able to set up some exchanges and set up some ways where the athletes were able to use the Spartan logos and things like that in their NIL deals. Not all universities have that. And that they were able to kind of not only do like an education component of this, but also really let the student athletes across the different sports kind of be a part of celebrating NIL, and they would give awards for some of the best NIL stuff, and they would have celebrations about it. They really made it a big deal. And so, when I heard that they won that award, I was like, okay, is this cool or not? Like, why? And if
Right.
it is cool, why is it cool? So I just started doing a little bit of looking into it, and that's kind of how the story idea came about, anyway.
Yeah. Something that shocked me as I was reading it is just how all encompassing their NIL process and program seems to be. And that was like something that I had never considered or even thought about before. I knew about, SD4L, and I had heard about the This Is Sparta site because of their the charitable donations. Sorry. Um, Talk to me a little bit more about those pieces because you blew my mind with all of that research.
Yeah,
Anything? Yeah, go ahead.
for sure. So it also educated me as I was writing it, and
Yeah,
that's the thing that I've learned in my career here. Whether I'm on this side of the writing it, or if I'm on the other side and being written about type of thing. But I've learned that reporters need to basically get a crash course in the thing that they're writing about every single time they're writing about
right.
it. And you have to kind of become a little bit of an expert on what you're writing about so that you can understand what questions you need to ask. And so
Yeah,
I really just didn't know enough when I first started writing it to understand if this NIL award was cool, or if it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, a bunch of people voted for their peers, and they got this cool award. And it turns out it was cool, and it was
mm-hmm.
well earned, and it was something that they should celebrate, because they are doing a great job. But I looked into, what is an NIL? What does it mean to actually be a collective? What are the different ways that people have approached this? And I break it down in the article a little bit, but as you mentioned, there was one club that kind of put itself out there at first. Wouldn't be really considered a true NIL collective, but they were trying to be kind of like a subscription based, give us your money and we'll coordinate with the MSU players and we'll offer you cool opportunities. I think it was called like the East Lansing NIL Club or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. That was something that happened across the country, not just in East Lansing, and it was kind of a model that was trotted out there to begin with. It didn't really work. It kind of fell apart a little bit, and it wasn't really considered too successful. But the other thing that people think of when they think of NIL, and so I had to just do a little bit of a deep dive into this, was the SD4L, Spartan Dogs for Life, and so that's a brand. Former Spartan football players and basketball players and all those folks really have gravitated to that brand, especially with the embracing of it by Mel Tucker. And he'll wear that gear and his necklace with Spartan Dogs on it, and he's kind of embraced that. So that at this point, though, they're just a brand. As far as I could tell, they're not a collective in the fact that they aren't really collecting money and then putting it out to players in NIL deals, more so than they are probably just sponsoring student athletes, ones that make sense for them to sponsor. That could change, though. Their website says coming soon, that they might be moving into that space. And so I've only heard good things about SD4L, and I know that they are well regarded at the Michigan State Athletic Office, and they do a great job with what they're doing. So, but when you get to This is Sparta, you get to a true NIL collective that's been around only for 18 months or so, I believe, but they've really established themselves as the leader in the space when it comes to the approach to take to get this work done. And so, Tom Dieters is the one who runs this organization. And what he runs is the Charitable Gift. Is it Charitable Gift America? I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
CGA.
Mm-hmm.
And they have multiple funds for multiple universities that are their NIL collectives. And for Michigan State, it's called This is Sparta, with an exclamation point, which got really annoying writing every time. My autocorrect would try to capitalize the first letter of the next word, and it was whatever. But yeah, got through that just fine. But This is Sparta has received lots of donations and has written lots of NIL contracts, and they made news last August when they sponsored the Michigan State women's gymnastics team,
Mm-hmm.
the entire team, not just one or two athletes, but the entire team. And when I was talking to Tom, it was interesting because he's like, yeah, I didn't even realize that we were breaking ground there when we did that. He's like, I was just doing, what I thought was right. And it was just
Yeah.
somebody was like, hey, the gymnastics team could use this money. And he's like, okay, well, let's write the contract and let's get it done. So he found some donors and he made that happen. And then he started realizing like, oh, this is kind of unique in the industry, and this is kind of something that isn't really done. And then a few months later, if you read the news, you'll see that he kind of branched out to some of the other teams as
Mm-hmm.
well, some of the Olympic sports we had talked about earlier, and
Yeah.
really kind of wrote some contracts for them on the NIL side. Of course, he still does, NIL contracts for football players and basketball players and baseball players. But he's super proud of the fact that it's not just for the revenue sports that he is able to make that happen, but really he's able to make an impact across all of the different sports. And so it was
Yeah.
a pleasure talking to Tom. He seems like a really nice guy, former Spartan baseball player back in the day, and lives down in Florida now. And he's really interested in this space, and he's doing a great job at it, kind of leading the way across the country. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later too.
Yeah. The spread that This is Sparta has across campus was really what got me. And as you mentioned before, that's something that always interests me. We cover it, we spread the wealth across campus. And so for an NIL collective like that, and like you mentioned, to kind of be the first group that's doing something like that, I think is super special. And after learning about these things, it makes sense that they got the award. But these aren't the things that they're advertising as much or people are talking about as much. Um, okay, tell me your opinion on this. I had been feeling a little bit down about our NIL stuff going on campus after everything that happened with the football team. Did you feel similarly? And has this changed your mind?
Yeah, and I think that the average indication of NIL is, are you able to get the big recruits, and
Right.
is it because you're offering them lots of money? And I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it.
Hmm.
But to be fair, that's the way I looked at it before I
Right.
dove into this. So it's a very fair way to look at it too. But the reason I was happy with the way this article turned out is because it allowed us to take a look behind the curtain at something that not a lot of people have written about. And so,
Yeah.
being able to drop 3,000 words on a topic that really hasn't been explored before is pretty exciting and pretty cool. And having, Tom Dieters give me kind of a backstage
Yeah.
pass to see how it works and how important it is, and kind of his vision too for the future. His vision is that it doesn't stop here. He wants it to be a seamless transition, seamless working with Michigan State. There's some things that have to happen for that to happen, including some legislative fixes here in the state of Michigan. But he's working on that. And Michigan State, for their part, Darian Harris had indicated in his interview with Jack Ebling that they're looking to move. He didn't name this as Sparta, but it just seems pretty clear to me, based on everything I've learned, that would be the vehicle that would drive the most of this. But he had mentioned that there's some ways that this might be able to move forward. And so when it comes down to it, you take a look at where Michigan State is, and you think, okay, they're not just doing the big football players, and they're
Hmm.
not just doing the billionaires coming in and buying off players to come in and help out, but they're doing this in a way that is kind of building a solid foundation across the athletics department, not just for the big time sports. But one of the things that was interesting to me is I asked Tom, and I said, how does the Title IX part of this work?
Hmm.
Because there's not a collective in the country that is giving equal monies to men and women.
Right.
To be fair, there are some really big contracts out there for women, but the vast
Yeah.
majority of the contracts that you see are for football players and men's basketball players. There are some really big ones for women's basketball, for
Hmm.
gymnastics. I believe down at LSU is probably one of the largest one of those. But um, you know how does this work? And Tom said that there are ways in which you can still be in compliance with Title IX and run a collective and allow big time gifts to funnel to the football program if that's what your donors want to do. So he says he teaches classes, in fact, about NIL, and so he knows the
Yeah.
ins and the outs of it. And so he's pretty proud that that's going to be a way that he can stand out with his company and helping out these universities that sign up with him to make sure that they are within the rules and the laws. But also, even if Title IX isn't a requirement, just the idea that you can still have that in the back of your mind, that it's an important thing to aim for. As far as I can tell right now, Title IX does not apply to collectives, but Michigan State wants to make sure that if it ever does, that they're in a position where they be able to make sure that they can comply, which is
Yeah.
smart, especially given the fact that
Absolutely.
Michigan State's had some Title IX issues in the last couple of years that
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
figuring out and fixing. So
I feel like it's just a good foundation to go off of, anyways. And I like that they took that into consideration. Something else that I wanted to bring up about kind of some things that you researched up and some things that Matt mentioned to me last week briefly, and I was happy that you followed up with your article so I could learn more. Um, Something that they've been pushing a lot to the student athletes, and a part of the reason that MSU got this NIL award was because of the education that they do with their student athletes about financial literacy. Last week, that blew my mind, and I love that. So, do you have any more information about that from your research?
I don't have a ton more about that. It was good to see that the program is kind of an overarching program that handles all of the different aspects, and that they're not afraid of NIL. That they're
Yeah.
not afraid of what this means for the student athletes, and the fact that they're leaning into it, and the fact that they are able to take this and turn it into real world,
Yeah.
experience for these kids, as you call them. They're adults now, but they seem
Yeah.
like kids still. But the the fact is, one of the latest deals that This Is Sparta wrote was for Charles Brantley, and I reported in the article, that one of the things that's cool about his NIL deal is that it gives him access to mentors in the
Mm-hmm.
fields in which he wants to go work. So not only is he getting some NIL money through this deal, but he's also going to be able to meet with the people who are going to make a difference in his life and in his career. So I find that fascinating, and I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty cool part of it too.
Yeah, definitely. I just, I sometimes I think NIL almost takes it makes them seem like objects that are able to be bought in a way. I mean, essentially. And I love that this picture of it all is kind of wiping that away, and it's treating them as students, as people, that are also athletes, setting them up with financial literacy, mentors in the field that they want to go and work in. Um, I feel like that's unheard of, and not the space that I had envisioned NIL to go in. So truly, I've done a 180 of my opinion of NIL after finding all this information out. And I hope that anyone listening that wants to know more can check out David's article. It'll be linked, as I said, in the description and pinned on our Spartans Illustrated site, so you can find it easy if you're going that route. Anything else you want to say about this article and your process of writing it at all?
Well, just the fact that not everything is all sunshine and roses too. I mean,
Yeah,
there are definitely hurdles that need to be overcome,
of
and
course.
there are things that need to be fixed and everything. And there are some student athletes who aren't necessarily getting the best deal when they approach their NIL
Hmm.
stuff. So it's important for the student athletes to find people who they can trust and to make sure that they're signing NIL contracts with those who they know will follow through and will make
Right.
sure that it's a legitimate thing. So that's important. But really, I would appreciate if everyone kind of clicked on that link, read through it.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear their comments. Anybody
definitely.
can email us at any time at spartansillustrated@gmail.com.
Hmm.
And if you're not a subscriber yet, reach out to me, and I can help you out with maybe a code to get you started, so that you can kind of check us out a little bit. But Spartans Illustrated at gmail.com is a good way to reach us. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can DM me at any of those places too, and we'll be in touch to make sure that you can get your subscription going. It's pretty exciting time, to be a Spartans Illustrated subscriber. So come join the club.
Definitely. Okay. I want to touch on one more thing before you head out, David. We
All
had
right.
some exciting football news with some 2024 commits. Any notes on those guys coming in, and how can people that are interested in Spartans Illustrated find out more about these commits?
Sure. So part of being a subscriber at Spartans Illustrated is you kind of get a little bit of hints coming in your way. We try to make sure that we don't ruin these kids' moments and take away from their ability to make their announcement on their time. But
Right.
we do drop some hints in the forums to make it clear that there's news brewing. And so we were aware that Wednesday, there was going to be a commitment Wednesday. And then during the camp on Wednesday during the day, there was some news that was happening too. Phone calls. We kind of overheard Mel Tucker receiving a call in which he received a commitment. Couldn't tell on our end who it was, but he was excited to hear that, and that one turned out to be Campbell. And obviously, we were already aware that Powers was going to be committing that night, and so it was pretty cool to have that too. For we weren't expecting Campbell to announce Wednesday night,
And
so Ryan
fast, yeah.
O'Bless, yeah, he did a great job of getting that article pulled around and getting contact with Campbell. And it's nice to get these 2 3 stars committed to the program. You can read all about them at our website, and including some film review, some analysis on what it means for the recruiting class. Maybe this will springboard Michigan State forward a little bit, and their class can grow. But something of worth note is people will say, hey, you guys are just going backwards. You're getting 3 stars. We need these 4 stars and all of this. And just make it clear that Rivals has a way to distinguish between, not all 3 stars are the same. Not all 4 stars are the same. These 2 guys that just committed are actually high 3 star athletes. The 3 stars rank from 5.5, 5.6, and 5.7. So you could say low 3-star, mid 3-star, and high 3-star.
Hmm.
Both of these guys are the high 3-stars, and so it's not quite a 4-star in the rivals world, and those are hard to come by. There's only a couple hundred of those across the country. So and the recruiting analysts, they only get a certain number of them that they can give out. So it's not worth just judging people based on stars. It's worth
Right.
understanding that Michigan State is doing what they need to get done, and soon they'll be judged on the field. Are these the right kids? Are these the right student athletes for the program? And how's it going to work out? So come read all about it at our website. We'd be glad to have you.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you touched on with the star stuff is great. I just think people weigh too much into that sometimes. It's important, and it's good work that Rivals, puts out all of these ratings because it gives you a sum of a picture. But the interviews that are on our site, the guys talked so highly of Michigan State and how it felt like home, and those are the guys that you want, regardless of what the stars are. If they're feeling like they're at home on your campus and they like the program and they're ready to work, Mel Tucker and the staff, those are the guys they can mold. And I think that's what's most important. And it was just exciting to hear some positive football news because I had been yearning for it a little bit. So it was nice to have them, regardless of their, star level.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a
yeah,
couple months since Michigan
it
State got a
has.
commit, and so you kind of want to get that momentum, especially going into the fall. A lot of these high school kids want to get their commitments out of the way before their
Right.
football season starts, so they can just be done with that.
Yeah.
And then of course in December there'll be a bunch that sign up and pledge their commitment, if you will,
Hmm.
to the program. So we'll of course follow along the journey and see who
Hmm.
comes on the Spartans radar and who
Yeah.
ends up being there. And it's an exciting time to be a part of all of this, and it's an exciting time to be a part of Rivals.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, David, for coming on. It's
You're
kind of
welcome.
long overdue since,
Yeah,
you're the leader of us all. It was nice to hear kind of the background story of how Spartans Illustrated started. Um, and definitely check out our stuff on the website. As David said, it's great. I love the team. They put in a lot of work, pump out a lot of content. So check it out. Linked in the bio, as always. Thanks so
yeah.
much, David.
Thanks, Cindy,
Have a
for
great
having me.
rest of your night and
All
see you
right, you too.
later.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, me again, all by myself. I just wanted to do a little bit of a current events run through at the end of our episode here, just to give you a couple other pieces on some things that have been going on recently. As far as upcoming official visits for the football team, this weekend, June 16th through the 18th, only Decker DeGraff, 3-star tight end, is scheduled to come to campus now. Some things have changed, especially and most importantly, 3-star QB Miles O'Neill committing to Texas A&M and kind of releasing out that no interest in MSU anymore. He's not coming to campus. Just a little bit of a change from what was originally scheduled, so I wanted to give you an update. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, along with the theme that David and I touched on, another really cool article that was just put out on Spartans Illustrated was by DK. I had him on the pod a couple weeks ago. He's a basketball guy. He really did a good job kind of giving a review of the 2024 um, basketball, Michigan State basketball team, and kind of where they stand in as it relates to other Big Ten teams. So he really did a nice kind of tiered system and ranked the different teams after doing a deep dive into their rosters and how things have changed since last basketball season ended. So I wanted just to touch on a couple of his points about Michigan State that I really thought were great. And then I'll link his article in the description, and I would highly recommend checking it out because he put a ton of work into it. Um, the things that he said about Michigan State, and the thing that one thing that stuck out to me the most was MSU's player retention this season. So Walker, Hall, Akins, and Hogard all coming back after having a couple of those NBA feelers out. That's huge for the Spartans, and it gets me excited to watch them again because they will have so many veterans coming back. MSU had I would say, a decent season last season, exceeded expectations from my point of view, and I think from here, I think they only have upwards to go. They're going to have a much deeper bench, which is something else that DK touched on. and just all the hype around the new guys coming to campus. I just feel like MSU this year is on the cusp of something really fun and exciting. And I think DK really put that into some good words with his article and his review of kind of where they stand with the other teams also. Because I'm always one to be hot on how Michigan State is going to be, just because I like Michigan State. But he does a really good job of putting it into perspective, kind of with the tiers that he used. So definitely check that article out. I really found it to be an enjoyable read. And it got me excited about Michigan State basketball, which is a long ways away at this point, but never too early to get excited. All right, that's the end of our episode today. I have some exciting stuff planned, and I'm hoping that I can get the ball rolling on that soon. So more to come there. But hit subscribe on our YouTube. Find us anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. And as stated a bunch of times today, check out Spartans Illustrated. We have some really cool stuff over there and a really great staff that puts out tons of great content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.